Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to talk about the reward ship for the ongoing campaign. It is HMS Belfast, but not any HMS Belfast. Oh no, we already have HMS Belfast in the game. It's at Tier 6. Tier 6 Premium British Light Cruiser. This Belfast is HMS Belfast 43. That's right, the number 43 follows the name of the ship to signify its difference. What does this mean? Well, it means that Belfast 43 and Tier 6 Belfast are exactly the same ship. The only difference is Belfast 43 is the configuration of HMS Belfast later in its life, or at least later than the configuration which is represented within the game at Tier 6. So for all intents and purposes, these are the same ships. They're just at different tiers. Now, what does that mean in practice? Why is Belfast 43 at Tier 7 while regular Belfast, without any number on it, is at Tier 6? And the answer to that is I don't know. But make no mistake about it, both versions of Belfast are powerful in their consumables. Note here that Belfast 43 and Belfast at Tier 6 both share what is honestly a fairly overpowered combo, and that is smoke plus radar. Their radars, for all intents and purposes, are identical. They have a 9-kilometer range, and if not the same exact duration, then a very, very similar duration. I think they're both 9 km 30-second radars. But the smokes, those are different, as you might have noticed. Belfast at Tier 6 gets two what you would call full-length smokes. I think they last for over a minute, so you can park in them comfortably and farm enemy ships in sort of a stationary way with your smoke screens on Belfast at Tier 6. Whereas Belfast 43 here has 6 charges of the British destroyer smokes. These smoke screens last for, I think, 30 or 40 seconds or so, and they dissipate very, very quickly as a consequence, but you get 6 of them, so you can use them over and over. And as to which is better, honestly, I'm not sure. I kind of like these British smokes a little bit better, now that I really think about it. They do offer some useful gameplay things in terms of increasing your survivability, honestly. When I first pulled into this cap at the very beginning of the game, that was way too much of an aggressive move, to be totally honest with you. It could have resulted in me being destroyed if the battleships over here had been maybe a little bit quicker shots or slightly better positioned. I don't know. It was too aggressive, but I had the smoke screen, so I could slow down, pop the smoke, go undetected, and use my radar to spot the enemy Akatsuki that was in the cap. Ultimately, that ended up driving the Akatsuki off, and I don't think he's going to return to this Charlie cap, at least not for a long time. And then the York pulls up, and you can see we're also using the smoke screen with great effect to the York. The Belfast 43, being the exact same ship as the Belfast at Tier 6, does not have a very large hit points pool. It's only got 38,400. I think that might be comparable to other Tier 7 cruisers like the Ochakov, but the Ochakov, if you've ever shot at one, it does have a tendency to snatch battleship shells with the Fist of Stalin and send them straight to the Gulag, whereas the Belfast here, if it catches a battleship shell, it is much more likely to explode and then sink to the bottom of the sea. So the survivability on this ship is not good. It's got no armor, it's got an exposed citadel, and it doesn't have a lot of hit points. You can choose either between these 6 smokes or between the heel. Frankly, the heel is nothing special. It is not the super British cruiser heel like you would find on the Edinburgh, for example. It is just a standard cruiser heel, and honestly, I think the smoke increases the survivability prospects of this ship more because you can use it like this. when you've got Yorks near you. You can use it to relieve the pressure on yourself so ships can't shoot at you. Maybe you can shoot back at them. I think it's best to use this smoke when you're retreating away from ships or kiting away to block vision, and the Belfast does have a very good smoke firing penalty. So there is that. These smokes are not very conducive to just sort of sitting in them, I suppose, and trying to farm damage. They only last for 40 seconds, and the Belfast, being a British cruiser, has some quirks to it in terms of the way it accelerates. In other words, it accelerates very quickly or relatively quickly, but it takes forever to come to a complete stop. And in order to even make use of the smokescreen, you do pretty much have to be at a complete stop, because you get 2, maybe 3 puffs of it before it runs out. And because of how long it takes the Belfast to come to a stop, well, if you deploy a smokescreen and you're going at too fast of a speed, then you're liable to just sort of glide out of the smokescreen. The smokescreen can also come in handy when you sort of don't know what to do and you want to sit broadside to the enemy whilst raining fire down on them for a moment while you decide which way you're going to turn. You'll note also that the Belfast 43 has torpedoes, which the Belfast at Tier 6 does not, although these torpedoes are not necessarily all that useful. I'm going to get the most use out of them that I've gotten in any game I've played in the Belfast, and I've played quite a few games in this ship. I'm going to get the most use out of them in this game that you see before you, and it's coming up very, very soon. But this example is not a good example of these torpedoes being used in regular, everyday practice, because the enemy who eats these torpedoes is really not going to do anything to avoid eating them, whereas many other ships may take evasive maneuvers. So I suppose the question is, why is the Belfast 43 at Tier 7? I don't know. Another thing that it shares with Belfast at Tier 6 is the gun caliber. These are 152mm guns. The only real difference is that Belfast at Tier 6 actually has a faster reload than Belfast at Tier 7, Belfast 43 here. And the discrepancy between those reloads, well, there's no other way to describe it than it feels bad. Almost as bad as this Flanders is about to feel. Maybe he didn't know the Belfast 43 has torpedoes. He certainly didn't seem to be expecting them. And as you can see, they do hit, well, they hit fairly hard. We did over 20k there, and we caused a flood. Normally, I would follow that up with a shot. I was a little hesitant there, and I'm going to deploy a smokescreen because I don't want Flanders to shoot back at me. Unfortunately, I miss. But as I was saying, the discrepancy between reloads, between the two versions of Belfast, it feels bad. I would rather have the faster reload of the Belfast at Tier 6, and I assume the discrepancy between the reloads also calculates to a discrepancy between the actual DPM of both ships, and I can't imagine the results of that calculation would be in favor of Belfast 43. Let's just say that. So essentially, this is Belfast at Tier 6, but put into Tier 7. It's got slower reloading guns, it's got torpedoes of questionable usefulness, and instead of the long-duration smokes, it gets 6 British destroyer smokes. Why this entitles it to be at Tier 7, whereas Belfast proper is in Tier 6? Honestly, it's anybody's guess. These ships feel just about as survivable as each other. Like I said, though, I do think these multiple British destroyer smokes do increase the survivability aspects, or survivability prospects of Belfast 43, and I think they allow you to do more creative or aggressive things just because you have so many of them. But at Tier 7, this ship can regularly expect to face the likes of Yamato, Conqueror, and all the other legendary tier battleships, whereas Belfast at Tier 6 is never going to have to worry about that unless it purposely fails up into a legendary tier game by getting in a division with a tier 7 teammate. By the way, there is our third torpedo hit on the Flander. You would think he would have learned his lesson maybe by now, but that's not the only torpedo he's going to take, if memory serves me. Unfortunately, while this ship is effective in its utility, what we did earlier against the Akatsuki in that cap circle using the combination of our smokescreen and our radar, extremely powerful. You might say overpowered. That Akatsuki had no recourse. He wasn't even able to spot us while we were radaring him within the confines of our smokescreen, so his teammates couldn't even shoot at us as we were making quick work of him. I don't think the value of that can be understated. It is very, very potent. The problem is the Belfast is just not that survivable of a ship. It really can't take a hit, and the firepower from its main guns is, well, it feels pretty mediocre. Now, I should say that I do think these guns have better penetration with their high explosive than the Belfast at tier 6, but that certainly doesn't make up for the DPM you lose just because of the length of the reload. As a consequence, this ship feels both more capable and less capable to me than any of its light cruiser counterparts at tier 7. I think the Russian cruisers, they all have good radar in the sense that it has a very long range, but they also have quick-firing guns with a long range. They have more hit points, and they are harder to kill, frankly. And the Cleveland, the likes of the Cleveland at tier 7, well, it's got a ridiculous crap ton of firepower, even if it's not that well armored, and it's very good at, posting up behind islands and raining down very fast and continuous HE spam. Belfast 43 here can't really do it. The only other ship it's sort of comparable to, I would say, is perhaps the Suzuya, but I don't even think that does it justice because the Suzuya lights a crap ton of fires, has more useful torpedoes, and is good at kiting and dodging incoming battleship fire, whereas Belfast 43, not very good at it. So it's not a very survivable ship, but it is a fairly useful ship in terms of its utility. In fact, I think its lack of survivability and its lack of firepower is what is going to lose us this game. And I think it's what's going to lose us another game that I might put up to show for you, just because I think the plays in it are so fascinating. But the bottom line here is my team has simply died around me. I think I did what was necessary to win the game. I prevented that Akatsuki from capturing C early on. Not really my fault if Lay Terrible did not want to go into the cap until the battleships were inside of it so that he could, lose his life to their fire. But I digress. I shouldn't blame my teammates too much. All I'm saying is I tried to do what I could to win this game, and I feel like I contributed most out of anybody else on my team toward trying to win. I think the leaderboard will reflect that, but the Belfast just doesn't have the tools necessary to wrap this game up and bring it home. Maybe if it had a little bit more hit points or was just a little bit more survivable, I would be able to take on this Flandra, who has shot HE at me the entire time, so I don't necessarily think he would be that scary of an opponent, but he's going to take me out because I have no health here. So my advice, if you want the Belfast, well, Wargaming has already re-released it a number of times. I would wait for the next time they release Belfast at tier 6, because this one, I don't think it's an appreciable upgrade, and I think the placement at tier 7 could perhaps hinder it very greatly. Let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.